Hey everyone! In the previous lesson, we have met Ruskin Bond, an eminent Indian author and who has won various awards like Sahitya Akademi Award, Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan. Ruskin Bond is rightly considered to be one of the greatest Indian writers in modern times. The author Ruskin Bond, he works in different genres, but all his books have one thing in common, and that is they are written from the heart. Well, do you know the meaning of this word genre? A genre is any stylistic category in literature that follows specific conventions like fiction, satire, non-fiction, drama, poetry, prose, and these are various genres in literature. When I said the author Ruskin Bond works in different genres, that means he has written short stories, novels, autobiographies, and some non-fiction works. As we will listen to his story, The Night Train at Deoli, so it's a good idea to talk about Ruskin Bond as a story writer. You know, Ruskin Bond keeps his stories simple and touching at the same time. Most of his books are inspired by real-life experiences and have a deep philosophical meaning. As he was brought up in India, so he has a very deep understanding and a clear idea about Indian village life and Indian culture. And this quality has added a colorful charm to his stories. If one reads any story by Ruskin Bond, he would definitely fall in love with his writings. As I told you that most of his books are inspired by real-life experiences, and this present story, The Night Train at Deoli, is no exception. This story portrays how one event, memory or dream can truly change life. The story is told from the point of view of a young college student who visits his grandmother during summer holidays. The train passes through a small local station in the jungle, and the boy always feels intrigued and fascinated by this lonely place, and the name of that lonely place is Deoli. So this is the backdrop of this story. But before we listen to the story, let's know what is a short story and how it can be critically evaluated. So, in this lesson, we will discuss theme, plot and characters of this short story, The Night Train at Deoli. But first, let's know what is a short story. A short story typically takes the form of a brief fictional work, and it's usually written in prose. This literary genre is usually concerned with a single effect conveyed in only one or a few significant episodes or scenes. And generally, we have a few characters in this story. Yes, it has a plot, it has a theme, and maybe more than one theme, like a novel, but generally it does not have a complex plot or complex characters. In layman language, we can say that a short story is such a story that can be read in one sitting. Now, let's have a glance upon the themes, plot and characters of The Night Train at Deoli so that you will get a clear picture, a clear idea of this literary piece of work. Dear students, please pay your attention towards the title of this story, The Night Train at Deoli. Whenever we write a title of a story, a novel, a drama, a book or any literary piece of writing, we must write it within inverted commas or in italics. Now, let's first take up the theme of this story, The Night Train at Deoli. In this story, we can find the themes of innocence, memories, connection, love or infatuation that is presented with great sensitivity. In this story, love is an emotion interlaced with a web of perplexing components that's very difficult to unravel. In fact, the emotion that the protagonist has felt, it's a love or it's just an infatuation. This point also can be explored while reading this story. So, when we read the story, keep it in your mind that we have various themes in this story, as this story gives his teenage experience during one of his train journeys to Dehradun. Various critics say that it has been his real life experience. So, the narrator of the story is the author himself. Let's know about the characters of the story. The protagonist. And what does it mean, the word protagonist? Protagonist means the main character of any story, novel, or drama. So, the protagonist of this story, The Night Train at Deoli, is the narrator. We don't get the name of that narrator anywhere in the story. In fact, we don't get the name of any character in this story. But still, the reader gets connected to those characters. There are only two main characters, the protagonist, who is the narrator, and the girl, around whom the story revolves. But there are some other characters also, like the station masters, the old station master and the new station master, the guard of the train and the owner of the tea stall. But these minor characters like the station masters, the guard and the owner of the tea stall, they speak very little. And the guard doesn't speak at all. So in a way we can say there are very less dialogues in the story. This is the narrating power of the story writer, Ruskin Bond, that keeps the reader engaged and fascinated. Now let's discuss the plot of the story. Well, what is a plot in any literary piece of writing? The plot in a story, film, or any other literary work is the sequence of events where each affects the next one through the principle of cause and effect. That means these events, these incidents, they are interconnected and have a cause and effect relationship. We can say the casual events of a plot can be thought of as a series of events linked by the connector and so. Dear students, please pay your attention towards the point that there is a difference between the plot and the term story. When we talk about stories, we tend to use the word plot. But what is plot exactly? How does it differ from a story, and what are the primary features that make up a well-written plot? All these points we can discuss in detail in another lesson, but now you just know that the plot is the foundation of a story, and it can be described as the what of a text, whereas the characters are who and the theme is the why. So these three things which we have been discussing here, theme, characters and plot, are answers to these question words why, who, what. So why refers to the theme, who refers to the characters, and what refers to the plot. So we have been discussing why, who and what of the story The Night Train at Deoli. I would suggest that after reading the story, you should come back to this slide and read it again. This step will help you a lot in understanding the story completely. Well, the plot of the story is that the narrator's love for a poor basket seller whom he meets at Deoli station. He meets her twice, never to see her again, but she remains in his memory ever after. This story focuses on the meeting of the two strangers and their brief acquaintance. It captures the essence of a few moments with the unrestrained suspense and all-pervasive romanticism. In fact, this plot of the story follows a logical, enticing format that draws the reader in. It has been quite captivating while reading the story because the plot highlights a specific and purposeful cause and effect relationship between a sequence of major events in this narrative. You know, every plot of the story or novel, it has 5 elements in this order. Number 1, that's introduction or exposition. Second, rising action. Third, the climax or turning point, and the fourth is falling action, and the fifth one is resolution. Have a look on this picture that makes clear about all these 5 elements. So, the composition of the plot is divided into 5 parts. The first part of the plot, that is known as introduction or exposition, it establishes the main characters or protagonists and setting. That means we get to know who is who as well as when and where the story takes place. In the second part of the plot, the rising action, as its name suggests, that the primary conflict is introduced, that action is built upon to create tension or idea both within the story and the reader. The third part of this plot is climax or turning point. So this is the part of that plot that is considered as the biggest plot point, and it puts our characters in a situation wherein a choice must be made that will affect the rest of the story. Now, the fourth part of the plot is falling action. In the second it was the rising action, then there is a climax, and then it falls. Resolution is the final plot point when everything has been wrapped up and there is a sense of finality or closure here, making the reader feel that there is nothing more they can learn or gain from the narrative. Dear students, why did I explain this composition of plot? So that the story that we are going to study, we can evaluate it accordingly. Well, through this discussion, you must have got an idea about the story, its backdrop, its characters, its protagonist, that's the main character in the story, and of course, its plot. Now, in the next lesson, we will take up the text of the story into consideration and we will listen to it. See you in the next lesson. Bye for now. Thank you for joining. Happy learning.